Hi, I'm Richard from DPReview, and this is the new Sony a7R6. It's the latest in the company's high-resolution full-frame camera series, and it's built around a sensor that significantly expands what it's capable of. It's the first in the series to use a stacked CMOS sensor, delivering 66 megapixels and able to shoot at up to 30 frames per second, and with much improved video. It also gains a brighter viewfinder, the first we've seen that claims to be HDR-capable, along with a new, larger capacity battery that increases endurance, but also means a loss of backwards compatibility. All the biggest updates in the a7R6 come from that sensor. It's a stacked CMOS sensor, but unlike cameras such as the A1 II that have DRAM built in to cope with fast shooting, here Sony describes the second layer as processing circuitry. This is likely to be what allows it to combine its high capacity and low noise readout modes to boost dynamic range. It's still pretty fast though, with that 30 frame per second capture backed up with options such as pre-capture and speed boost mode, which adjust burst speed when you press a button, so that you can only engage 30 FPS shooting when you actually need it. The faster sensor means the camera can expand far beyond its studio landscape comfort zone and start to rival the likes of Nikon's Z8 and Canon's EOS R5 II for weddings, events and wildlife. And the good news is that the camera's expanded dynamic range means existing R-series users aren't making compromises for those speed improvements. In our studio, the a7R6 captures impressive levels of detail, as you'd expect of the highest resolution full-frame camera on the market. This reduces still further the circumstances in which it's necessary to use the multi-shot high-res mode, which has to be combined off-camera. And we've been impressed by the dynamic range we've seen so far. Sony quotes a figure of 16 stops of DR, which is a number that deserves a pretty large asterisk. But we see little reason to question their claim that it's their highest dynamic range camera ever. It's worth noting though, that as with the a7 IV, maximum dynamic range is only seen in mechanical shutter mode. And improvements in DR are a question of improvements in the noise in the extreme deep shadows of RAW files. It's the resolution improvement that you'll more often actually notice in most photos. The a7R6 offers broadly the same AF features as the a7R5, but the latest processor boosts performance somewhat. It gains the auto subject recognition mode, which you can adjust so that it only tries to identify the types of subject you expect to encounter. It also gains custom AF area modes and sees the smaller AF target made a little smaller and the largest one a touch larger. We were very impressed with the AF on the a7R5, so weren't necessarily expecting huge leap forwards. But having used it in a range of circumstances, it seems to be up to the job of making the camera's high-speed modes genuinely usable. Sony doesn't describe this as a sports camera, and that's not just to protect A1 II sales. We took it to a rugby match to put it through its paces, and while they may shoot at the same rate, the rolling shutter speed, autofocus performance and viewfinder experience just weren't quite at the same level. It also misses a couple of ergonomic niceties and a couple of pro-focus features. We found, for instance, that there was noticeable lag in the viewfinder when using the pre-capture option. Also, this lacks the extra custom button that Sony's sports cameras offer on their front plate. And that's really well placed for engaging speed boost mode, especially if you're already using AF on the back for back button shooting. Of course, the fast sensor doesn't just mean fast stills. It also underpins the much improved video capture. But given that he learned about this sort of stuff at college, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Mitchell for this.
If you just look at the spec sheet, it's not immediately obvious how much more capable for video the a7R6 is than its predecessor. But that increase in sensor speed shows up in a lot of places, and it means that this is no longer a camera that can technically shoot video in a pinch, and is instead a credible hybrid option whose 8K mode has very well-controlled rolling shutter, and which is capable of full-width 4K 120 for buttery slow motion. Those 4K modes also have very fast rolling shutter rates, though you can actually trade some of that speed for dynamic range. Sony has added an option called dual gain shooting, which uses the same technique as the camera's stills mode to capture more detail on the shadows. There are a few trade-offs. This doubles the rolling shutter rate. Sony says it's really only suitable for landscapes and still subjects, and is limited to 4K modes at 30p or below, and certain ISOs. But it's nice that, like Panasonic, it's added this as an option. Another new feature is this camera's support for 32-bit float audio, letting you record without having to worry about whether you're applying too much gain and clipping your sound. Again, like with Panasonic cameras, this isn't built in and is instead available via a newly announced XLR adapter. Now, that accessory is quite expensive, but it's nice that it exists for anyone who absolutely needs the reliability of a built-in solution, rather than an external audio recorder. The a7R6 also gains several other modern video features. Those are things like auto subject recognition mode for autofocus, Sony's active dynamic electronic stabilization mode that applies a heavy crop to make your handheld footage look as stable as possible, custom monitor LUTs, AI-powered auto framing, and hey, a tally lamp. With all of that said, this is still a high resolution camera. And if you're a video-first shooter, it probably makes more sense to lean towards the faster, lower resolution models. Its 4K modes are subsampled, so they're not quite as detailed as the oversampled modes from cameras like the Canon EOS R5 or the Panasonic S1R2. They have very consistent levels of detail across frame rates, which will be handy when you're cutting them together, but that does mean that the 24p mode doesn't offer any higher quality than the 120p mode. Also, like the rest of Sony's hybrid cameras, the a7R6 doesn't offer any intermediate resolutions or aspect ratios that would give you more flexibility in post. But that might make more sense with this camera than with, say, the a7 IV. It's more likely to be used by people like wedding photographers shooting video alongside stills than as a dedicated video camera. Despite all that, it's pretty remarkable just how capable of video the a7 IV is for something that's so good at stills. As Richard says, that fast sensor has made this a much more flexible camera than the a7R V. But let me send it back to him to finish telling that story.
Overall, we've been impressed by the a7R6. Its specs make it a much more like-for-like competitor for Nikon Z8 and Canon's EOS R5 II, and it's a much more adaptable camera than its predecessor as a result. The great news is that, unless you're reliant on something like an intervalometer that plugged into the old multi-interface micro-B USB port, existing a7R shooters shouldn't be disadvantaged by the increased speeds. The use of a new battery will be frustrating for any existing users with an investment in spares. But we're pleased to see that the camera comes with a twin battery charger to make the switchover easier. Also, while it's great to see a viewfinder that actually lets us preview HLG images, it's a shame that Sony is the only big brand that doesn't let you shoot RAW and HLG HEIF at the same time, which acts as a major disincentive to adopting a true HDR workflow. As things stand, the a7R6 matches its peers for speed, is competitive for many types of video shooting, and bests its rivals in terms of both resolution and dynamic range. At $4,500, it costs 7% more than its predecessor, but less than 5% more than Canon and Nikon's list prices. For an awful lot of professionals and committed enthusiasts, it's an impressive step forward for the series. For more information about the Sony a7R6, and indeed cameras in general, head to DPReview.com.